Hello again, Taurus. Didichi Toth here from astrology.com.au. Thanks for joining me. And big month, September 2015. Looking now at the very, very powerful Sun and Jupiter conjunction in your fifth house. Now, the position of Jupiter is considered very powerful in this fifth house, what we call the second trine of the horoscope. And it is now currently in an opposition aspect to Neptune. This fifth house has to do with according to some ancient astrologers, your mind. Some Western astrologers look at the third house for that and the ninth house for the higher mind. But this fifth house is the mind in a way. It's also a spiritual component of the person, and you've also got the Sun there. So these are very important, but Jupiter for you is a bit of a weak planet, ruling your eighth house, and this can cause some problems for children, especially if you're a parent. This next 12 months could be one that's a considerable challenge. Having the Sun there as well, which has just been in conjunction with Jupiter, it's just moving away from it now. This is called combustion. And so the affairs that are signified by that planet, so in this house of children, Jupiter's considered the planet that also rules children, and the eighth house being shared resources of finances, and the fifth house being what we would call a speculative house. All of these areas of the person's life, namely the Taurian, that's you, will be under the hammer during this period. The Sun-Jupiter combination, mind you, as just leaving aside all those other components, is considered lucky. But for you in particular, you need to be a little bit careful if you're planning any sort of, sort of extensive investment or gambling, I think is the word I'm looking for there. You know, there are a few aspects that are very important now that surround that planet. One is the Venus and the Jupiter conjunction, with Venus retrograde, by the way, your ruling planet, in the fourth house, and Mercury, another friendly planet, ruler of that fifth house, in the sixth house, and that goes retrograde on the 18th. So this is all pointing again to, that this is more related to if you've got children. You need to spend some time with them. You need to talk to them about health issues. You need to talk about their mind, how they're feeling about themselves, because these are the sorts of things that sometimes go amiss, especially if you're too busy. So that's a focal point. We see also the solar eclipse in that fifth house of Virgo. Now, I've focused a lot on children here, but of course, this area of the horoscope has much to do with love affairs, romance, and creativity. Cheers. So, there's no doubt you'll be full of creativity, but having that opposition from Neptune, to me, indicates perhaps a reaching for ideas that are beyond your capabilities. You may need to look at means of improving your skills. Let me give you an example of that. I used to play music for many, many years. So up here, the capacity to hear the music now, because I haven't practiced for years, the capacity to imagine and hear that music is available here in the imaginative sphere. But when it comes to the practical sphere, well, if you're rusty, you're not going to be able to play your licks or do your scales and all that sort of stuff. So let's just adjust that to your circumstance. That could be a thing where you need more practical application of your skill to make those ideas and those concepts and imaginations real and viable. The retrogression of Venus, that's very, very important. That continues up until the 6th, at which point it starts to move forward, but you won't feel the full effects of that up until probably after the 15th of the month. And this is interesting that it's happening in your 4th house of family affairs, domesticity, real estate, that sort of thing. You've had to really, really consider, or rather reconsider, your position on some things there in your home life. Note also that there's what we call a perfect conjunction between Venus, your ruling planet, and Mars, which is the planet of long-term committed relationships, which if you're married, this is pretty important. This is also called the planetary war. And the planet in the lower longitude actually wins that war. That would be Mars. So if you've got any conflict, or you're going over some sort of issues with your partner throughout this month, then it's quite likely that your partner has the upper hand here. And even though you are empowered by this retrogression of your ruling planet, you may have to acquiesce and allow that person to have, I guess I'd call it the upper hand here. So it's a bit of an expedient period where you may have to just bite your tongue for the sake of peace, and not allow your passions to get in the road of good negotiation skills. There we see Saturn in that 7th house of marriage for you, which has been causing some really, really big issues over the last couple of years. Saturn naturally challenges you, inhibits you, and creates those tests that are important for you. Here we see that it transits out of that 7th house, the western part of your horoscope, on the 18th, followed closely by the moon, which incidentally on the 13th in the 5th house is a new moon. So there's a whole lot of new stuff happening for you in the area of relationships. First, the challenges to that relationship moving away, then moving into the 8th house for the next 2.5 years. This 8th house is all about those secret things, the hidden side of your personality. It is considered a spiritual house by some astrologers, Eastern astrologers. I used to be terrified of this particular sector of the zodiac because I have most of my planets there. I just have this thought, oh my God, I'm going to die young, or I'm going to be murdered. Because, if you read the traditional meanings of that, it's very ominous. But my thinking was corrected after many years of study, and it's come to my attention now that this 8th house really is, it's the natural house of Scorpio, so you're able to, I guess, revise yourself, to transform yourself. This is an important, challenging period for you coming up in a different way to what you've had with the other person. This may also have a lot to do with money. You'll be changing your value system during this period. So I'm giving you a bit of a prelude to that, and we're going to talk about that more as the time goes on. But you should feel some fairly significant shift, Taurus, during these transits this month. Now, this 6th house, 12th house is very, very important too. The reason being, as I mentioned, the lunar eclipse takes place at the end of the month, and that's in the sign of Aries, which is your 12th house. So we talked about this hidden stuff. The 12th house is even more of a hidden area than the 8th house, whereas the 8th house might have more to do with those elements of your own personality, your character, the emotional and subconscious. The 12th house has a lot to do with your past. This can do with your past karma, and of course don't forget the south node, or the past karma point, is there in that 12th house. So a lot of your past is coming up. That will tie in nicely, I think, with this subconscious challenge that you've got. You'll be forced, in spite of yourself, because we see the trine aspect between Saturn and the south node and the moon, and of course that coming big lunar eclipse there on the 28th. Connecting the dots, subconscious to events. What happened in the past there that has made me who I am? What were those events that are possibly lurking there in my subconscious that I have to kick to the curb? whereas in the past you may not have been able to do that, you are now at a point where you can actually do something about that. And it may not be that difficult, although, experiencing that may be difficult, but seeing it, that's often 90% of the problem. If you can see what those problems are, then thank God you're able to then identify and work through some plan, whether that be some therapy or some meditation, astrology, whatever feels comfortable with you. This is a good omen. And the full moon there, because this lunar eclipse means that in Aries it will be opposite the sun. 12th house has a lot to do with giving of yourself. And I've always maintained that one of the most cathartic and spiritual activities is charitable action in the process of giving of yourself selflessly. That is actually when this true self starts to emerge. And I talked about that in my introduction today, the whole idea of astrology being a tool of self-empowerment. The moon ends up exalted in Taurus on the 30th, the last day of the month. That's lovely. That brings with it some, curious sort of mental traits. You need that to help push you through this period that's coming. And I'll be there to help you if I can. Astrology.com.au if you want to get some more information on that. More than happy to make myself available. We have a lot of other interesting information there to support what I'm saying here textually. So do join us there, and I hope to see you here next month, same time. Take care. Bye-bye. Stop.